All right, we're doing it. We're doing it. We'll do it live tonight here on a Friday. Let's get weird at WiseRye. It's where you can follow me on all of my social media platforms if you dare. So Sixers tipping off at home tonight again against the same team. I hate when they do this in the NBA. I don't understand it. I know it's to limit the traveling and to limit the back to back. So Magic come to Philly for the game on Wednesday. Orlando won, by the way, in that one 106-102. Nobody played. But now they hang out in Philly for a couple of days and run it back in what the NBA calls a mini series. So we'll see who's going to be playing tonight for your 76ers. We have Sean Barnard joining us here in just a couple of minutes. We'll have some fun, talk some Sixers, get his thoughts on everything that's happening surrounding the squad, because there is a lot that's happening surrounding the squad. Some interesting news earlier today. Shams reported that the Warriors are going to be looking to add a star, be aggressive in the trade market. Does that mean anything for the 76ers? We'll get Sean's thoughts on that. I don't think it does. Daryl Morey's not going to move Embiid, obviously. He's not going to move Paul George. Although nothing will surprise me anymore with this team and this franchise. But that's my 2 cents on it. We'll dive a little bit deeper into that. We'll look at some updated betting odds for the 76ers, not just for the game tonight, but for the futures market. We'll look at their updated win total. We'll look at their updated odds for everything on your betting/wagering menu. So Sixers and Magic. Sixers are 3.5-point home dog, 5-15 record. I mean, they have a mountain to climb here just to try and get close to 500 and just to try and sort of hit the reset button, which they need in the biggest way here. I don't know. I don't even know if the season's salvageable. We'll talk to Sean. We'll have some fun with Sean. So, all right, we'll do it, man. Listen, as you see, I don't know if you can see how many viewers we have. It says it's supposed to be 10,000. There's only a couple, but I wanted to put out some content with you tonight, Sean. So, one, thanks for joining me. I want your thoughts on everything that's going on with this squad, dude, because it is an absolute bleep show. I was just talking before you jumped in the stream about these mini series. Like, I don't get them. Do you have any opinion on this? Like, why are the Magic in Philly for 3 days? I don't get it.
Yeah, it is weird when I first saw it. Like, I assumed it was kind of a home and home type of thing. That would be the way they go. But yeah, it doesn't make much sense to me. I think the NBA is trying to lean a little bit more into like the series side of things to build like a playoff atmosphere is like the hope of it. But I just don't think you're, getting that in a nice December matchup for whatever it's worth there. So I appreciate the effort there, but I don't know. It's been an absolute mess with the Sixers team. So appreciate you having me on. I'm excited to dig into it, man.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Trying to do more on YouTube and social media. So I appreciate you. You're equally important here. But yeah, let's just get right into it before we get to tonight and some other things I wanted your thoughts on. Just give me your opinion on Joel Embiid / how the 76ers as a franchise overall have handled this whole situation, because we're used to Joel Embiid sitting out. We're used to Joel Embiid missing time as a city, as a fan base, but obviously it's never been this bad. So what's your thoughts on everything, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, to put it like bluntly, extremely poorly is how they've been handled it from just about start to finish this year. My biggest issue with all of it is the lack of transparency. That to me, it's very clear that there's more to the story than that they have made public, or at least they have a better idea of what is being talked about. Whether that is a Joel thing for him not expressing that to the organization, which I've heard plenty of whispers about that being the case, or if it is the organization like not being public to the fans and to the media perspective there, it's just wrong, the wrong way to go about it. And I frankly think it makes everyone look worse when you're doing this guarded information, the maybe he'll play or ramping up. And there truly hasn't been like a great explanation at any point in this. So there's a lot of different ways to look at it until we get a concept of what the situation with Joel. I'm not sure we're ever going to kind of know these answers, but I think the unfortunate reality is he's got some real deal degenerative knee issues. This isn't probably something that's going to go away in the short or long term here. And I think they've done a pretty bad job of their management of it, but it's going to be a problem moving forward is sort of my read.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, this is complete speculation, and listen, I enjoy speculating as much as the next person, but we can only do it to a degree here. But like, Sean, what do you think? Because I agree with you. There has to be more to this story, right?
Right.
We're not complete idiots, but I've just been thinking like, so what is it? Like, did something happen at the Olympics? Like, maybe it wasn't even with his knee. Maybe it was something like with the team, right? Like, I don't understand what the issue could be here because he had a basic meniscus injury where that timeline is typically a 6-week recovery. Now, I know he's had multiple injuries. I know he's a large human being playing at an elite level for a long period of time, but to go from like 100 to 0, how he has done, I don't know, man. Like, what do you think it could be?
I think like the negative outlook or thing or concerning outlook is if we just hit that point where like Joel has obviously dealt with a ton of injuries forever. It's kind of, if we want to be honest with ourselves, like this being the book on him since when he was drafted. That was the concerns why he was dropped to 3 because of injury concerns at the time. The fact that he was able to become an all NBA player for as long as he has been is kind of a miracle that was the case there. So there is a chance that this was just the breaking point, that the meniscus wore past the point of return, and that I honestly think it's going to be purely like pain management from here. But it is concerning when we hear stuff about the knee swelling up when he returns to game action and things like that. So I kind of think we might have just hit that breaking point. I'm still optimistic that like they have this game plan and, you know, maybe things can work out where he can get that one healthy playoff run. But obviously you got to get there for that even to be possible. So it's been a disaster. Again, I would like more clarity, but I think like there probably isn't that one thing that happened. It's probably just kind of a war of attrition, and his knees past the point of this being like good enough to go on a night by night basis.
Talking with Sean Barnard, hanging out with me here tonight before the Sixers Magic tip off in Philly at the Wells Fargo Center. Follow him at Sean _ Barnard 1. Does an excellent job. Sixers NBA insider for Fox Philly Gambler. They do a great job too up in the Philly area for Fox Sports. So, man, I don't know. Like, here's the other thing I wanted to talk about with you as well. When Embiid and Paul George have come out and said at different points so far this season that it's like, we want to play, but man, our hands are tied. It's not up to us, right? And it's like, okay, once again, I believe that to a degree, but also if they were dying to play, I think they would be out there, right? I think we would have seen Joel Embiid more than 4 times if he was storming into Morey's office or whoever's office he needs to storm into, right? So is this possibly an ownership issue? Because you look at how Joel Embiid has been managed or lack thereof since day one. The only constant is Josh Harris and ownership, right? Like, do you think it's more of an ownership plan, a Daryl Morey plan, a Nick Nurse plan? What do you think it is?
So I look at both these slightly different. For the Paul George side of things, like he clearly had the legitimate injury. We saw it on the court, the back-to-back, where you're getting those knee bruises, the bone bruises on the knee there. And I don't think that this was part of the plan with Paul, that he's played 10 of a possible 20 games. I think we probably have a little bit of a different tune right now if he was at least close to healthy and only missed a handful of things. And even in those 10 games that he has played was on a minutes restriction for the vast majority of them. So I think Paul's a slightly different case. With Joel specifically, I can speak to with certainty that it is him that makes those final calls for whether or not he goes. And that's why it's so frustrating of the constant news of it being like, you know, he's going to go through pregame routine and see how it happens. And even like last week's game where he was upgraded from doubtful to playing in the span of like within that day, like the organization.
Sorry to cut you off. Are they just bleeping with us when they do that?
It's a Joel thing is sort of the answer that I've constantly got on that. And in fairness, like to the current regime here, like Joel has outlived so many of the people in higher positions. We're talking about all the general managers he's been through, the coaches, like he, to an extent, has been the stability for the Sixers franchise. And with that comes him kind of setting the rules and acting the way that he wants to act. So I don't think that's the proper way to handle things, but they kind of, you know, this is how it's played out and nothing has changed that. So I think Joel bears the brunt of the responsibility for that. Nobody can tell him how his body's feeling except for him. So I understand a little bit of the sympathy there. And I do think he's a unique case, but from top to bottom, I think it's been the lack of transparency makes everyone look worse. And they both got to wear that.
All right. So if we have to try and be positive and say, how did the Sixers salvage this season, right? Like, can they turn things around? You mentioned Joel Embiid being really the only constant and stability over the years, recent history with the 76ers franchise. And I agree, which is scary. But you look at the roster turnover year to year, even in season, like the in-season trades that have occurred. Then you look at the off seasons that we've had over the past 3-4 years. Joel Embiid has had a different running mate and a different roster completely, locker room, every single year. And now you bring in Paul George, which is a huge addition, but that's going to take time to build up the chemistry for a title contender. Do you think they can still do that? Right? Like, is this season salvageable, and to what degree?
Yeah, I mean, what gives me optimism is just how weak the East is. Like, even as disastrous of a start that this has been to the season, the Sixers sitting at 5-14 there. They are 2.5 games out of the play-in tournament and 5.5 or 4.5 out of the actual playoffs there. So, like, as bad as it has been, they sure could get on a hot streak, and then all of a sudden we're talking about them pretty concretely in the playoff picture here. I wouldn't be the guy that's rushing to bet that at this current moment. That is my belief. That the biggest thing and the biggest question mark, which we're not going to get a concrete answer on, is like, what is the status of Joel? Because as much as we talk about all these pieces, Jared McCain has looked awesome. Tyrese Maxey, while the efficiency is not there, we know who he is as a player and a guy that isn't afraid of the spotlight. Paul George, still, even though he's not what peak Paul George was, this is a guy who's a 9-time All-Star, still one of the most, like, you plug him and play him on any team and he's going to bring something there. There's still pieces here. Gershon Yabusele has been awesome, but it's all built around Joel Embiid. So if your foundational piece is not there, if there's a crack in the foundation, it doesn't matter how good the rest of the infrastructure looks. So I still think there's a chance that it could all click, but my optimism is far lower than it was entering the season for sure.
All right. So on the flip side, do you think there's any chance? Like, I saw Shams put out some relatively breaking news earlier that the Golden State Warriors are looking to be aggressive in the trade market to add, a legitimate star to go alongside Curry out in Golden State. That made me think, like, man, is there a chance that Morey says, you know what, screw it, I'm flipping Paul George? I want to ask you about Embiid, although I think reality is no way Morey does that. But do you think there's sort of a clear/clean house mentality at any point if things get worse?
I wouldn't say yet. I think this season is going to play out with basically the core that we have. And for the Joel conversation specifically, so he signed the extension in this offseason, which makes him ineligible for trade for the entire year. So any of the Embiid trade talks have to be postponed until this exact summer. And I see the question about value here. How the rest of this year goes, I think pretty much drastically impacts that. I will say it feels closer to the Joel Embiid breakup than I ever honestly thought was possible, or that we could get this quick. And it's especially disappointing when factoring, like, I kind of think Morey did it. Like, this is the team you've been asking for. This is there's talent on here, but you got to hold up your end of the bargain too. So for as far as the value conversation, I think how the rest of this year plays out will drastically impact that, because all these other teams see the exact same situation as well and see the uncertainty and all the injury issues that have happened. So I don't think he's a guy that could get that haul of picks or players for a player caliber of his talent because of the obvious injury concerns. I don't think we probably get there. I think we probably see how this year goes and then try and rebuild, and kind of, if things go to full disaster this year, it's scrapped up as injuries took us out. It was a season from hell. We had horrible luck, and we try and run it back next year. I don't think anybody's going to be buying that, but that's kind of what my expectation is from the organization.
No, I think that's their best strategy if things continue the way, continue down this path. But it's frustrating, dude, because Yabusele is a stud.
Yeah.
I am a huge fan of his game, man. He's a hustler. Obviously, he's trying to make a mark in the NBA, so he's going to be hustling. But you can tell he has that motor. He can step out and shoot the three. He has nice footwork. He can finish around the rim. I like everything about his game. Obviously, McCain is now by far the betting favorite to win NBA Rookie of the Year. You have Maxey, an all-star, right? Like, you bring in Caleb Martin. I mean, this team, to your point with the East, like, this team with a healthy Embiid and a relatively healthy Paul George is a title contender. It's ready to be a title contender. Morey did a freaking outstanding job over recent seasons, especially this offseason.
Yeah, I 100% agree there. And to your point about Yabusele, he's a guy that I think could end up being a casualty of this season, because, like, when looking at the long term, he's obviously on a 1-year minimum contract. Minimums are more valuable now than ever before in the NBA because of all the cap constraints that are going down. He's a guy that's tailor-made to help a contender, and we thought that's what he was being brought in to do here. that may not be shaping up to be the case. And if we're still kind of sitting in a poor spot in the standings, wouldn't shock me if Daryl Morey looks at it and says, it's probably pretty unlikely that we can re-sign this guy this offseason. I think his market's going to be really strong and deservingly so based on how he's playing. That is a guy I could see them moving off and shipping away for draft picks or return or something, which would be very disappointing because he's awesome to watch and a guy that can absolutely help a contender.
No, absolutely. Man, Sean, let's look at tonight for a second. Sixers sitting at 5-15, desperate for a win, sitting at pretty much the basement of the Eastern Conference. 3.5-point home underdogs. They've been bad at home. They've been bad on the road. They've been bad on the team bus, on the team plane. It's been bad everywhere. But can they get a win tonight to get to 6-15?
I do think they get one tonight. That
Okay.
With Paul George back, Andre Drummond gutting it out, which is going to be a huge help against a Magic team that's an excellent rebounding team and commits to that side of things really, really strongly there. So it will be nice to have Drummond back, and shout out to him for fighting through the ankle injury. They were close in that last game with the Magic, just didn't have that kind of final push there. My hope is this Paul George is all that it takes for that. I think this Orlando team is good, but maybe not quite what the record would say at this point. And obviously they're still without Paolo Banchero. And then, the hungry dog runs faster, man. Like, if this team's going to do it, if it's going to turn anything around, you got to jump on every opportunity you have pretty much from here on out. So I think this would be a huge win for the Sixers team, but I do think they get one tonight.
Before I let you go, man, I appreciate your time. Just get your thoughts on the NBA right now, just in general. Right? Like, who do you like? If you had to, let's ask you this: if you had to predict the NBA Finals matchup, who is it and why? I'll give you mine. I love the Oklahoma City Thunder out west. Not a surprising pick. It's sort of a Captain Obvious, but man, I just love that team. They've come together really, really well, and you can see that early on in this season. So I like OKC, and then come on, how can you not pick Boston on this side of things? But what say you?
Yeah, I was unfortunately going to go with the chalk pick as well. That I think that is the most likely outcome. And to be honest, it feels like those two are in a caliber of team of everyone else in the NBA at this point. Just the depth that each team has, the way that they play together and really found their identities. I mean, Boston's more committed to beyond the 3-point arc than any team in history, even the prime Warriors, for the rate that they're throwing these up right now. And you factor in, we haven't even really seen them fully gel with Porzingis yet. Peyton Pritchard having a breakout season of his own, who's been incredible this year. There's a ton of talent on that roster. And I still think Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are plenty hungry. So I do think Boston's the rightful favorites in the Eastern Conference, and will have a pretty strong chance at repeating. And then when you look at that Thunder team, I still think there's another level that they can get to. Obviously, Chet Holmgren hurt right now. We haven't seen him share the floor with Hartenstein, which I'm incredibly excited to see as we think about that was really the driving force of why they were eliminated last year. Alex Caruso hasn't played his best basketball yet, shooting the ball really poorly this year. So I still think that there's levels that team can grow throughout the season. But I think the West is going to be far more competitive than the East in general. A lot of young, hungry teams. The Rockets, I think, are more legitimate than some people are giving them credit. Dallas Mavericks, I think, got better from last year after their run. When you talk about Najee Marshall and Klay Thompson, bringing that to that team. So the West is going to be a battle. The East, I think Boston's got a pretty red carpet laid out.
Yep. Classic 76ers. Sean, where can people follow you, right? Like, what do you have going on? Anything and everything you want to promote or share?
Yeah, and once again, appreciate you having me on. Always fun to chop it up and hop on. But you guys can follow me on Twitter or X at Sean_Barnard1 there. You can check out my work on YouTube as far as Sixers Digest and Phillies Digest, but I'm churning out some videos over there. On Fox Sports The Gambler, I'll be on air 11 to 1 tomorrow with Mark Henry Jr. speaking about all things in the NFL and NBA and everything else that pops to mind there. So that and yeah. So yeah, that's just about it for me. At Sean_Barnard1 on Twitter is probably the best way to tap in.
All right, perfect. Sean, you're the man. We appreciate you, and we'll talk again very soon.
Absolutely. Appreciate you having me.
Later, man. There he is. Great stuff from Sean Barnard over with Fox Sports The Gambler. They do some really good stuff as well, putting out great content. So make sure you check out everything that they're putting out there. So who's the biggest dumpster fire that's not the Sixers? Can I include non-NBA? The biggest dumpster fire that's not the 76ers. I mean, the Sixers are such a dumpster. It's like there's nothing really even that comes close to the 76ers right now, really. I mean, the Wizards are a complete freaking joke at 2-18. It's the only team the Sixers are better than right now in the Eastern Conference. Trying to think of like a good dumpster story though. I mean, the Wizards have to be it. Sort of a boring answer, but that's what I'm going with. That's what I'm going with. All right. Big thanks to Sean. Give him a follow at Sean_Barnard1. We're going to try and do this a couple days a week leading into 76ers games. See if I can jump on maybe post game tonight if I'm feeling up for it. So good stuff, everyone. Make sure you follow and subscribe to everything I'm putting out there at WiseRye, WiseRye. Peace.